Monday morning check-in. As always, I appreciate you showing up. If you haven't done so already, please look down below and press subscribe, hit like. If you have someone that's just come home from prison, this is kind of where I'm talking to folks like that, right? Folks who have gone through reentry, going through reentry. You may even be working with folks who are going through reentry, right? And what's funny is when I first thought about reentry, I thought about it in the framework of that first 12 years I spent on parole, right? And it was the day after I was off parole that I still felt like I was on parole that I realized that reentry didn't stop when my necessarily legal obligation to the state stopped, right? And I encourage folks to think about, I'm 29 years removed from the conviction, but I am yesterday removed from the experience, right? Housing is still an issue as we are considering relocating. We have to honestly think about where we're moving to in a way that most folks who don't have a background don't have to think about it, right? And so what happens, you know, what happened to me initially when I came home from prison was that I had to move into my parents' house. Right now, this is somewhere I left when I was 18 years old. So I'm coming back at the age of 31, having spent 8 years in prison, moving into my elderly parents' home. Right. And not to no fault of their own, they weren't used to having a grown man in the home anymore. So it was uncomfortable for us both. But what that did is I didn't have anyone who had been through that experience that I could reach out to and say, hey, man, what did you do when you were, or what mistakes should I not be making in order to do this? But often what holds people down or what stops people from being able to make quality decisions is one, you're on parole, right? And your housing is dictated by whether or not your parole officer approves it. So you just can't up and move somewhere. And what usually happens is you realize that your parole officer is accepting of you having a relationship and moving in with that woman. And so that's what ends up happening is that you get out of prison, you end up connecting with someone that you really shouldn't be with because you need a place to stay and you can't get a place to stay. No, I'm not making an excuse for it. I'm just telling you the reality of what that is, right? So, knowing what I know now, I want to encourage folks who are just getting out of prison, if you are looking to have your own place, begin to build credit. And the way you build credit is by going to a credit union and getting a credit card or a line of credit. You don't have to use it, just pay it off if you use it, right? Um, be very open and honest with the person you're communicating with. Some of the mistakes I made when I came home was that I was not completely honest. And once they did the background check, well, obviously it came up. So the more honest you are at the outset, the more comfortable the person that you are working with will feel when they're advocating for you. So to bring it back to now, as we are thinking about relocating, that is one of the um, components of our calculus that is something that we have to constantly be aware of, is that we just can't up and move where we want to when we want to, because we have to go through an extra level of approval that most folks don't, right? So I just want to encourage people who are first coming home from prison, don't make, I don't want to tell you to don't do it because I don't want you to feel like I'm telling you what to do. Think about the decisions that you are making when you are in what you consider a crisis, right? Um, think about having an open and honest relationship with your parole officer or your probation officer. You know, in all honesty, I was violated one time while I was on parole. But had I not had the kind of relationship I have with my parole officers, I would have probably been violated dozens of times, right? So um, I want to encourage you that one of the toughest things you're going to deal with is having to be honest about your background. But one of the most powerful tools you're going to have is your background. Once you realize it's not so much of a um, something that's going to keep you from succeeding. If you allow it, it can help you succeed, right? Because overcoming the experience of prison, that takes a certain type of character, that takes a certain type of tenacity. And that tenacity can be transferred over into other industries, careers, and ways for you to become an influence on other folks' lives, right? So Monday morning check-in. I don't want to make these long, but I want to make these impactful. All right. So y'all let me know in the comments if these are helpful. What other things you think I should talk about that will help people come home from prison. In 12 years, I experienced the whole gamut of, things that you can go through while on parole. Everything from drug addiction to eviction. All right. So y'all have an amazing rest of your week. I hope your month is going well. Make sure you don't forget that Valentine's is coming up shortly. So take care of the one that's been taking care of you. All right. Have a good one.